Let's talk about where we ought to be when we come out of this, which God knows when, but when we come. Let me say I think there are two big structural changes that we'd want to see. One is we need to definancialize the economy. We went from an economy in which about 4% of GDP came from the financial sector to an economy in which 8% of GDP comes from the financial sector, in which at its peak, 41% of profits were being earned by the financial sector. And there is no reason to believe that anything productive happened as a result of all of that. We had all of these extremely highly compensated bankers who were essentially just finding new ways to offload risks onto other people. And we really need to shrink this back down. We need as I've written, we need a boring banking sector again. All of this high finance has turned out to be just destructive. And that's partly a matter of regulation. But we need to accept that we're not going to go back. And by the way, also a political economy vicious circle here, because as the financial sector got increasingly bloated, its political clout also grew. So in fact, deregulation bred bloated finance, which bred more deregulation, which bred this monster that ate the world economy. The other thing, and this is a little bit off, but I think it's worth saying, one thing not to miss is the importance of a strong social safety net. By most accounts, most projections say that the European Union is actually going to have a somewhat deeper recession this year than the United States. So in terms of macro management, they're actually doing a poor job, and there are various reasons for that. The European Central Bank is too conservative. Europeans have been too slow to do fiscal stimulus. But the human suffering is going to be much greater on this side of the Atlantic, because Europeans don't lose their health care when they lose their jobs. They don't find themselves with essentially no support once their trivial unemployment check has fallen off. We have got nothing underneath. When Americans lose their jobs, they fall into the abyss. That does not happen in other advanced countries. It does not happen, I might sort of want to say, in civilized countries. And there are people who say that we should not be worrying about things like universal health care in the crisis. We need to solve the crisis. But this is exactly the kind of time when the importance of having a decent social safety net is driven home to everybody, which makes it a very good time to actually move ahead on these other things.
Thank you, Paul. Neil, the future, the role of government, and Bill, you got the first word and you're going to get the last word.
Well, I tell you what, I feel depressed after what I've heard tonight. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen. We are now contemplating a massive expansion of the state to substitute for the private sector, because that's the only thing Paul thinks will deliver growth. We're going to re-regulate the markets. We're going to go back to those good old days. Oh yeah, you applaud because you think that's a great idea. Where were you in the 1970s? Just remind, where were you in the 1970s when all these wonderful regulations were in place? I don't remember that going too smoothly. But what else are we going to do? Oh, we're going to print money. Almost limitlessly, we'll print money. That's going to be fine too. And then when we're done with that, we're going to raise taxes. What a fabulous package we have in store for us. You know, back in late 2007, I was asked what my big concern was. And I said, my concern is that we're going to get the 1970s for fear of the 1930s. And that is exactly where the majority of people on this panel are steering this country. And it's very easy to forget in your ire and indignation at the failure of the market. It's very easy to forget where the true mainsprings of economic growth lie. Ladies and gentlemen, the lesson of economic history is very clear. Economic growth does not come from state-led infrastructure investment. It comes from technological innovation and gains in productivity, and these things come from the private sector, not from the state. If you want to try the Soviet model, fine. By all means.
I'll let you.
If you...
No.
No, but wait a second. Wait a second. If you want... No, let me finish.
One comment.
No, wait, no.
I think everybody on this panel is now biting his tongue, and let's let Bill,
well, Jeff,
including myself.
Jeff, we know where you...
Let's let Bill have the final word. No, come on, Neil, let's let you... We're doing you a good turn by not extending this 10 minutes. Bill has the final word.
We know where
Please,
you,
Bill.
Jeff, we know where you stand on big government, and remember your role is that of anchor. The critical point here is...
Please, Neil, my role of anchor is now to pass it on to Bill. I think we understand your point.
Very good.
Bill.
So, as we look at the future, one of the main things that we have to do, I agree with Paul on a social safety net, health, education in particular. But we also have to look at the mistakes policymakers made in the last 10 years. I mean, it's not news that people are greedy. That's kind of human nature. It is that we made conscious decisions not to put limits on that natural human impulse. What were the mistakes? In 1998, we allowed investment banks, insurance companies to combine. We eliminated Glass-Steagall. Why was Glass-Steagall put into law? Because the last time we didn't limit greed, we got into trouble, the Great Depression. And the second mistake was in 1999, the explicit decision by an administration and a Congress not to regulate derivatives, in particular credit default swaps, that in 2002 were worth $1 trillion and today are worth $33 trillion. And that decision not to eliminate derivatives created the following sequence. You have mortgages. 1,000 mortgages is a mortgage-backed security. 1,000 mortgage-backed securities is a collateral debt obligation. 1,000 collateral debt obligations is a CDO squared, and ensuring each one of those tranches is part of that $33 trillion. And we decided not to regulate it. 384 people in the London office of AIG destroyed. I'm now
to blame for AIG.
No.
Why did I accept this invitation?
No. I said the London office. It could have been Hamburg. 384 people in the London office doing the derivatives destroyed a company that had 116,000 employees in 120 countries. Why? Because there was no regulation at all. Third decision, 2004. The SEC allowed banks to go from 10-to-1 leverage to 30-to-1 leverage. And guess what? Once they were allowed to do it, they did it. And so if we're going to look at the future, we might think of undoing those three mistakes. And we might want to remember that the chairman of the Federal Reserve is supposed to remove the punch from the party when it gets out of control. And that did not happen in the Greenspan years. The opposite happened.
Thank you, Bill.
Just a brief point on Neil's point on socialism. The previous administration was so ideologically free market, laissez-faire, Wild West capitalism, and they didn't believe in any prudential regulation supervision, that they created such a big financial and economic disaster that they turned out to be the socialists, because they were the one that implemented all these policies that are now government intervention. If we had been more pragmatic, less ideological, and believing government can provide the safety net, government can provide prudential regulation supervision, we would not have this mess, and we'll have an economy that functions as a market economy where the government will have its own role. That was the problem.
Nouriel, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank Niall Ferguson for being a brave soul up here. I would like to thank the editor and publisher of my favorite publication, the New York Review of Books, and Penn World Voices. Thank you all for being a very good audience. Thank everybody on the panel. We appreciate it.